while on a trip back to India, Nikhil goes back and forth to the memories of his childhood friend and mentor as he attempts to resolve his life's conflicts. However, fate plunges him into situations that challenge every concept taught to young Nikhil, and he is drawn onto a dramatic journey of self discovery across continents. Does Nikhil get the answers he's been looking for, or does life continue to puzzle him? That for you is the sage. Dr. Rishi, my first question to you again on this context. How much of your first book is autobiographical?
So, of course, the book, the storyline and the narration is not autobiographical, but for any first time author who doesn't have a training in literature and let truth be told, I've also not read enough. I've read relevant pieces, but I don't call myself into a really, kind of very deep interest in literature from English literature point of view.
Although, carry a paswa.
Yeah, so I'm choosy. So maybe as luck would have it, I am choosing the right books. But I would not say I've read extensively in terms of the volume of work, but I have read extensively in terms of the diverse works in Hindi, Urdu, and English literatures. So what was the question again, please?
How much of it is autobiographical?
So, okay. So it's not autobiographical at all from the storyline and from the narration point of view, the content. But of course, like any first-time author and untrained author, you can only write about things that you have seen closely, have felt closely, the instances, the people, the situations, the ideas that have been associated, and you have seen it happening in your life or in someone else's life, either close or far away from you. So you draw inspiration from that, and then you try to weave it into a costume and then try to give it into a story. So of course the ideas and the concepts and the situations, maybe at some points of time, maybe lines picked up from my friends, from family that have resonated with me, and I have tried to weave in a chapter around those lines. So of course it is drawn from my life's experiences, but it is not autobiographical from a narration point of view. So it's not the story, it's not my story.
Is not you.
No, certainly not me.
For the audience, how many of you have noticed something very interesting and quirky about the name of the book and the author name? Did it strike anyone? What? Good. So was this pre-planned?
It was not. It was certainly not. And again, I'll be absolutely honest in you, and you'll have to believe me on that front, that throughout the book, and we have discussed this earlier at another platform, the entire book is set in the background at various stages in a park or a garden, and it revolves around trees, be it a park in Mumbai or a Central Park, New York, and later on in some other city, which I would not disclose for the sake of exposing too much of the plot here. But then, so entire journey, I was thinking of something related to an enchanted garden or a Zen garden or something like that. But most of, and I realized when I was searching for a name that most of the names have already been taken up and copyrighted in one form or the other in books or in movies. So I was finding it very difficult to find short names. But towards the end of the book, I found that the sage was not taken by any book or any novel or any movie per se, and it somehow kind of aligned itself so well with towards the end, when the story turns a little into the conflict between the spiritual and the materialistic world. So I thought that this is a perfect title for the book. It was much later on, it was pointed out by Nandini, my younger daughter, that it is a very narcissistic kind of a name, because the day it gets translated into Hindi, it would sound like Rishi by Rishi. So I'm sorry for this narcissistic name, but it was not intended initially, and it happened.
Okay. So do we have anybody from the audience who's read the book?
Yes, I have.
Oh wow. Okay. Anybody else?
I mean, I think I'd have to say yes.
She has to say yes.
Is that a forceful yes, or you have? You floated through the book, basically.
I've read so much of it in the initial phases that I didn't read the final copy.
So were these assignments given to you that read and give feedback?
They were more like our nightly discussions were this. Like, I guess it was just like critical discussions that we just had a lot of times. Like, yeah, I guess in the process of the book being written, there were a lot of debates and discussions about the same topics. So I just feel like I know every chapter, but I don't know the book as a whole.
Interesting. On that note, would you say this book resolves a lot of conflicts that probably an average young man would have in India today?
I would not say it resolves the conflicts that young people and older people, and I don't know which bracket we will fit in. So
You're young. They're
So-
kids.
okay, anyhow, but the book is never intended to solve the conflicts, and I have purposely chosen to write it in the form of a story and not as a set of series of essays, because I wanted to start conversations around the conflicts of human mind. And the conversations I wanted, the four basic characters in the movie are of different age group and different genders. So I wanted to debate these conflicts from different point of views. And that's what probably Nikita is saying, that I used to throw up a question and let's see what her response was, what the responses of people much elder to, what was the responses of ladies, what the responses of males. So all the four characters, Nikhil, Tanya, are a couple in their 40s, friends. Myra is a child, she's like 8-9 years old, Eurasian girl. And you have Krishna, and Krishna coming in different forms in the book, who is a very old and a wise man. So same concepts being debated between characters would probably give us different perspective. And it's an open-ended. Every chapter in the book itself is open-ended. So I would not say it resolves the conflicts, but it brings to the front various conversations around the conflicts.
How many of you heard him refer the book as something else? Did anyone hear that? No? Did all of you miss him referring the book as a movie?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
So he actually said it's a movie and not a book.
It's a movie.
I said?
So on that note, so if this was a movie, who would Nikhil be? Who do you think Nikhil be?
The actor?
Yes, except Amitabh Bachchan, anybody. He's too old for it.
So it's being considered for a movie,
Yeah. So
and
if it is, so
and the
who do you think?
shortlisted actors right now are wish list. Whether it happens or not, are my particular choice is Fuad Khan, but probably
Who?
Fuad Khan.
Okay.
Huh? But then,
So you can all
But then-
take out a Juloos and say we want.
but then probably there has been some reservations from people who are people are considering Shahid Kapoor, Saif, and Jimmy Shagel.
Interesting. That's a wonderful set of people. And who would the love interest be?
She's not actually the love interest. I mean, the Tanya you're talking about.
Yeah.
So,
So now my next question in that case is that since you're calling the lady of the protagonist, the lady protagonist as not the love interest, so how complicated do you think you have made relationships in this book?
it's not complicated. I mean, it's the realistic. I've remained shy from painting a very rosy picture about relationships. It's all relationship are complex. I mean, none of them is a Mills and Boone story. So I think it's a complex relationship in realistic world that we live in. So it's the complex relationship between Nikhil and Tanya in the world that we live in. There's nothing rosy about it. There's nothing bad about it. It's just realism, probably.
How many of you remember what were the 4 Facebook relationship status at one point in time? Anybody at all?
Single, complicated,
And married and engaged. You have only 4 options, and you've picked up complicated out of that. They were not single, they were not married,
No,
they were not engaged,
no.
so they were complicated, right?
I was not aware of the Facebook status, the 4 status. But yes, I would say that to pick one, they were complicated.
Okay. Coming back to something that you have brought in very comfortably in the book, that we always look outside ourselves for help when we are conflicted inside. So, in what ways does the soul searching journey is more an outward journey than inward journey?
It's very difficult to find answers within ourselves for the conflicts that we have, and many of the conflicts that we face in everyday life uh, are not huge, kind of existential crises. They are very common, simple things that we either are too shy, too afraid to talk about, to discuss. The people whom we can discuss, sometimes there is trust deficit. Sometimes we don't, we may or may not consider them, wise enough. I would not say to address those questions. The people that we consider wise enough, we have trust deficit with them. So I think it's very difficult to find answers within ourselves and very difficult to find answers outside. So we would be lucky if we can have a spiritual mentor or a friend that can guide us through these small and big crises, and probably that's what the journey of Krishna and Nikhil is.
So, as an aside, would you say that is the reason why the business of all these yoga gurus and dharmic gurus is growing by leaps and bounds? Because
Yes,
you're looking
yes.
for people outside to help you?
Yeah, to help you, yes, of course they are mass therapists. So it's kind of, and more than that, I think deviating away from the book. But I think since you have brought up this thing, I think this is one of in every life there comes a time when you try to seek for the larger purpose of life rather than your mundane daily activities, and you look for religion, you look for spirituality, and probably with different kind of people find different gurus and different thing to address that aspect, that incomplete void in their life, to find the larger objective in their lives.
Very interesting. Why did you pick up Krishna and why not Shiva or somebody else, as a matter of fact?
So Shiva actually also comes a little later in the conversation in the book, but Krishna was actually chosen purposely, and that was the only character introduced purposely, because I would not try to be too loud a mouth to use the same analogy, but I feel that I wanted to somewhat recreate the conversations around Bhagavad Gita in the modern world, and probably that's why I thought that maybe Krishna was the nice name to go by.
Very interesting. A lot of people will come back and say that it is very difficult to assess and come back and say that a doctor could actually feel so much of philosophy and yet come up with something which is so straightforward a story. So, when you got feedback on your book after it was released, what kind of feedback came back to you? Did they ask you that is this your own philosophy? Did they tell you what is the storyline reflected and how it worked with them?
So I'm humbled by the feedback that I am getting after the book. I was fearing that people will try to treat it like a self-help sort of a book, trying to resolve the conflicts of human mind, and the overall packaging is also a little bit suggestive on that front. But I think more than 90% people that have come back to me with their opinions, feedbacks and opinions, have said that it's a very, very fast-moving stories that takes them across different emotions, different time zones, different continents, and it's very difficult to put it down. So they found it to be an interesting story, and embedded so you can complete it as a story. You can complete it as a story, and then every chapter, every book, every paragraph will have detours into deeper meanings. So if you want to take that detour, be our guest, but you can complete it as a story also, without taking those detours that are little deeper in the strata of philosophy and spirituality.
Coming to your process of writing the book,
Mm-hmm.
do you remember any funny incidences, any memorable stories behind the scenes kind of a thing for the book?
Yeah, as I was telling you, like many a time since I was traveling a lot, most of the weekends, I would sit in an aisle seat, take up my headphone and like constantly voice text me the entire chapter, and people around me would like look at me in all strangeness of a man going nuts on a flight, because they would not understand. I would just close my eyes and keep on speaking to myself. So many a times I face this,
So
kind of issue.
do you remember anybody like that coming back to you and later said, "Do you need some help? Can I help you?"
No, they were kind that way. Probably they left me alone. Yeah.
Did you face any kind of challenge while spending hours and hours at home writing the book?
That is certainly a challenge, because uh, apart from your schedule, which is already very, very tight, you come back and then you kind of take a short nap and power nap in the evening, pre-dinner, post-dinner, and then spend 2 or 3 hours, writing and meditating upon issues. It does take away your family time, and it does bring a lot of disgruntlement.
Did you get hammered by your wife and your children?
Not hammered, but yeah, I was like put on the stake for quite a few times.
Did you have any brainwaves in the middle of surgeries or treating patients and then, oh my God, I have to remember this for later time to put in the book?
Not exactly, because that part, the work was compartmentalized completely differently, and I would text myself things and then I would create a story, but that would only happen in free time when I was not working.
Okay, good. Before we move on, does anybody have a question for the author? Anything at all?
I mean, Devender, if you have read the book, and Nikita was, hi, please.
At what point did you think that it's ready, it's final, or does it even, or do you still feel that there are things that you could have done differently? Like, how do you know that this is it, I can go publish?
Yeah, so the ending was the most challenging part of it, because for openings, I think books revolve around the first few lines in the first chapter. If it catches you in the first 10 minutes of reading, then you go through it. But the ending actually leaves an impact, for. So, the last line of Love Story by Eric Siegel is that when his love dies, then he says that, and he has a very strange relationship with his father. So the last line of Eric Siegel's novel is that, and then he did in his father's arms, which he had never done in his father's presence, he cried. So I thought that endings leave you always, so creating an ending was the most challenging part. But once, I had the last chapters ready, it was, the last chapter was ready, then the ending was not looking, it was looking too abrupt, so I did add another couple of chapters before that to make it less abrupt. But then the story was not over yet, because then by the time I completed that portion, that book entirely, and the time it got published was another 1.5 years. And at that time I really, edited out extra portions that were more intensely a sort of an academic, puking from my side. I skipped on writing, so I just removed those extra parts. So initially the book was around 100,000 words, but then it came down to 65,000. But then you are finally, end is ready, you have removed the extra chunks of rock. So I think then you realize it's time for it to go. And then when you send it to the publishers, and you certainly want their feedbacks and their what they have felt, and that's the first time you get to feel about what a reader will feel like, and then you go back and they will come back to you with a lot of suggestions about the chinks in the storyline, the characters not being evolved enough, and some things needed to be changed, and then you do the touch-up work with the help of the professional guidance that you get, and then it's for the world.
Yeah.
Firstly, what inspired you to write a book like that? And secondly, how long did it take for you to, because of your busy schedule, to finish it, to first read? Was it the cultural heritage that inspired you intrinsically? You are a spiritual person. What inspired you to write a book like that?
I would not say I would be a very spiritual person from a religious point of view, but yes, I am sensitive to a lot of things that go around me. So it took around, so I've chronologically documented when I started writing the book, because the book starts at 17th of August or 18th of August 2016. So that's the day I started writing the book. It took around 3.5 years to write in totality, and then 1 year of editing and then everything. So the entire journey was around 4 years. What inspired me or what instigated me to write was predominantly conversations with Nikita and Nandini, and I would see that for a same thing, we will have markedly different views, different opinions, and no one is correct. I mean, we are not correct, they are not correct, and maybe we both are not correct, and ultimately there's no reason for anybody to be correct also. But there has to be a conversation. You can't stick to a point. Concepts like, and the modern day definitions of concepts like trust, concepts like love, faith, human touch. Everything is changing so much fast in last 10 to 15 years that until and unless we have, are you an overhugger or underhugger of your children? How do you define that? Where do you draw the line? So all these conversations started at home, and then I kind of, every chapter would subtly deal with one or the other concept of human mind: trust, love, faith, power, love. A lot of things will come up, then ultimately spirituality and things like that. So I think, but then the story has to be weaved in a way that it doesn't sound too dogmatic and too straightforward to put an audience down. It has to be an interesting read for the people to grasp that thing via the story. Less is to be, said than is heard.
Did you take any professional help in tightening the story, making it so fast-paced?
No.
Keeping the philosophical bent of mind, this is reasonably fast-paced.
No, yeah, but it's completely no professional help from anyone.
Another aspect that you've got your characters to delve on is the decision-making ability of human beings. What happens when you are not decisive enough, and what happens when you keep dilly-dallying on the decisions that need to be taken? How did you come up with that kind of an aspect for each of your characters? And they were all very remarkably different. Nikhil has a particular way of thinking and decision making, I would say rather slow, whereas Tanya was a quick decision maker. So how did you come up with this kind of a contrast?
That was accidental, I feel, but that's the contrast that we find in our lives itself. Like many of the people that we meet, and many of us would be, too much of brooders on issues. Somebody would be, quite analytical and fast in taking. Some are emotional, some are very, very logical. So I think that reflects the characters, the diversity of the characters reflect the diversity of the people and the world around us. So it's more close to realism that way.
So who are you closer to, Tanya or Nikhil?
Oh,
in real life?
Nikhil, certainly Nikhil.
So you are an overthinker?
Oh, yes, I am.
That's interesting. By the way, we also have some interesting musicians from Ashoka with us today, and Ashoka University. And we hope to hear something from them soon enough. I have a couple of more questions and then we'll move on to some music. So, Nikhil, what are you writing next for your audience?
Now you made the same mistake. You called me Nikhil. So we are one even now, right? So okay. I'm not, although Dipankar is, kind of pushing me towards the second thing. Still the concept is not clear in my mind. But for last 2-3 years, I am deeply reading both Hindi and Urdu literature that is specific to our geographical area, starting from Uttar Pradesh, Delhi, Punjab, Pakistan region. And I am very, very impressed by the writings of a few of them. In Urdu, I am deeply impressed by Ahmed Faraz, and in Hindi, Ramdhari Singh Dinkar has been growing on me for quite some time now. So I think Dinkar everyone knows. Ahmed Faraz is also a famous man, but still I would say he's quite underrated as far as public knowledge about his work is concerned. So probably I'll write something about some Urdu shayars and how I weave it. It will not be translation, but how I weave it into a story, different. I don't know. That answer is not clear to me yet.
Okay. Incidental anecdote, within the publishing house is still referred to as Nikhil and not as Rishi. That's why it came out. Rishi, back to Rishi. Uh, there is a growing interest in translations. There's a growing interest in regional literature. It's like India's newfound love in going back to the roots. Why do you think that's happening? And this is a phenomenon in the last 5 to 6 years. Remarkably, huge demand for translations.
Uh, I would not. I would not too much, root for other. Sorry, for translations, because translations essentially sometimes take away the soul of the writing in the language it was initially thought of. But then, of course, translations of great works and both Hindi and Urdu and regional languages are also picking up greatly. And I think it's a very, very welcome move, because there's no, when you shed this garment of aristocracy associated with literature, then it is probably has more chances of reaching more people and influencing more people. And I think it's just a pseudo, kind of it's
A
kind of
legacy
hypocrisy.
left on us?
Yes. I mean, we have tend to relate literature with aristocracy, and so I think that if it goes away, it's a welcome step, in my opinion.
That's interesting. Would you have ever thought of writing this in Hindi first?
No, I'm not very good at writing, but yes, certainly parts of it has been translated by different people in Hindi, and I find that
Exciting,
they are very,
interesting.
very exciting. But my work order for them is like, don't translate it verbatim, read a paragraph, read a chapter, and then think.
Don't translate.
Don't
translate.
translate, right.
So usually people think in one language, emote in one language, speak in one language. So what are the three languages for you?
I think in Hindi and Urdu I speak predominantly Hindi and Urdu, but I can write only in English and Urdu.
Okay. How many of you think that you have three distinctly different languages for your thinking, reading, or emoting, and in your conversations?
I don't have a different language.
You have all three same. Okay. Anybody else who's all three are same?
Emoting in Hindi majorly, but you're speaking more, you be comfortable in English, but emoting then like in Hindi.
So aggression, as in लड़ाई में हिंदी या फिर?
लड़ाई प्यार.
Okay. Anybody else? Anybody who's a trilingual person here?
What?
A trilingual, three languages.
Yes.
Hindi and Punjabi. So आप किस language में सोचते हैं? Or what do you language think on?
Most of the time is in Hindi, while I'm at home, while I'm at work in English, while I'm with my friends, then it's Punjabi.
What language do you speak to yourself in? When you speak to yourself, what language do you use?
Most of us are bilinguals. Hindi and English come naturally to us, so we think in either language. It's very subconscious.
Okay.
I think milder blend of Urdu and Hindi is something I would like to converse myself in.
That's interesting. So you give yourself a lot of love and respect by calling us to hum and aap.
Yes, of course.
That's a
and
Lucknowian
not only myself, but everyone else around us. Yeah,
Okay. So that's a Lucknowi andaz, I would say, right?
yeah, it is.
So tell us something about the influence of the place that you live in, which is Lucknow and Uttar Pradesh, onto your book and your language and your writing style.
I think Lucknow brings a lot of embodiment of culture into anyone who has lived there for a significant amount of time, and it has certainly influenced my style of writing, not in terms of directly Lucknowi andaz coming in the Indian writing, but trying to be overall just sensitive enough and softer, saying a hard thing in a softer way rather than too blunt about it.
So it's a difficult question. Next one that's coming up. Do you see that entire Ganga Jamuni Tehzeeb slowly dying out in the Awadh region? And if so, what's your opinion on that?
It is actually, but then it's not that we can blame anyone or anything or any. I think it's the busy schedule of all our lives that we are too engrossed in things to feel about finer things in life. And I think that if we can start conversations around literature, around plays, around movies, I think it's still a salvageable situation. It's not completely lost. It is decaying away, but it's like any other thing in society and in the country. So, but I think it's not decayed to a point that it cannot be brought back, and the conversations like the evening like this, bring it back.
So now I'm supposed to end my conversation with another question, but before that I have another curious question. If something goes out, there's something else replacing it, or a vacuum is created, right? So if the Ganga Jamuni Tehzeeb is going out, what's taking its place, or is it a vacuum there?
Instagram.
Okay, is that what genuinely, seriously is that what's taking it?
I think so. I think so.
So we'll have a new.
I'll become unpopular, but I think so.
Okay, so you're saying that we have now got Reels as the new Tehzeeb coming up.
Yeah. It's very.
Reels is a way of life.
I mean, everything when done through a process. I mean, I'll stop here. I won't transgress into that conflict. But the fact is that I do feel that the virtual world is influencing our life, not in a very, very positive way as far as the social media is concerned.
Okay, good. If I ask you to compare literature and Instagram and think neutral, give us one benefit of both.
I can't be giving it. I mean, of course, it connects people. In both of them would connect people, but there is a different process in connection with literature and other forms of art, and it's quite a quick fix, Maggie, in Instagram.
Would you not feel Instagram has made things more democratic? Has broken the ivory towers, has made everyone reach out to everyone in a one-on-one basis instead of a one-to or a one-to-many basis?
You are drawing me into an area which I really don't want to get into because of logistic. I have my. So Devender, if someone or Nikita, if you have read parts, and Devender, if you have read parts, if you can.
Yeah.
I think he has a lot of curiosities in the book.
No, yeah, in fact, but I was fortunate enough who had already interacted twice with him, so had a lot of questions and interactions. So I think my two questions were there, which has been already asked. One was that again about the movie, which has been discussed, and second, I was so curious and so, I mean, after every chapter, I was curious what next, and it was so relatable. It was like, again, I started thinking that I'm Nikhil, to be very honest, while I was in the mid of a book. And then towards the end, though while it was ending, it was kind of a pain that I'm going to miss something now. So I wanted to ask what next, or something related next.
Nikhil won't come back, right?
No, certainly not. I mean, it's best to leave the end where it is, and so everything in the book is like open-ended. So Nikhil is certainly not coming back, and if you felt that way while reading the book, it's an humbling experience for any author, in me. But I would like to ask anyone, all of you, and if anybody can volunteer to answer that. Should you write, number one, for publishing or non-publishing? And whatever you write, should publishing be the end point of that writing? Should you write? What is the one value addition we see in writing rather than other forms of expression in terms of?
If you are answering in negative, remember we are in a bookstore and we are talking to a publisher. So keep the answer ready. We'll talk about it outside the bookstore. Yeah, now go ahead.
Writing is a great release to whatever you want to say from within, if you want to express your emotions. On the other hand, when it comes to publishing, yes, it's a wonderful thing to be recognized for, and the accolades that you get for your writing. If someone's agreed to publish your book, I think it's a great achievement.
But I think for most of the authors, it's a scary experience also to expose your
Yes.
mind and your thoughts to the world, and the fear of being judged. So that's again kind of, and who are we to tell anybody? So I'll tell you why I wanted to ask this question, because I wanted to, drive home a point. The first publisher I was speaking to over phone, so somebody else was speaking on my behalf. And they again said that, he's a doctor, he has edited medical books and this and that, and now he has thrown his hat into the literary circles. And pardon my language, but the phone was on speaker and I heard that, oh, don't give me that shit again. Everyone has a story these days. So it was very humiliating. And then I got back home and I thought that everyone has a story. Like, so what is unique about your story? That's a very, very wrong way of putting it. The whole point is that everyone has a story, and every story is unique.
Yes.
And you may choose to tell it or you may not choose to tell it. That's your choice. And you may choose to tell it in whatever garb. You may choose to tell it straight. You may choose it to write a poem about it, write a book about it, talk to somebody. But every story is unique, and expressing that story brings out a lot of catharsis in you, and it kinds of. Another point I want to tell the younger friends here, and certainly, life runs on, every day runs on like a book in pages, unless you add bookmarks in terms of you are traveling, you are clicking a photograph, you are writing, you see something and you feel strongly about it, but you can't speak to anyone about it, you can't discuss it. If you write it down somewhere, even 10 years down the line, 20 years down the line, if not for publishing, 30 years down the line, that day will always remain a bookmark in your life. So I would, speaking of airports, like I was coming back from Hyderabad, I think, and I was in that shuttle bus that takes you from the terminal to the aircraft. And I was just standing next to a girl who might be a little older than Nikita, and she was like just crying tears inconsolably, and some people tried to offer tissues and help, and she just did a thumbs up that she's fine. But that sight anyone can observe and just lose. But then everyone's mind is running, like, what is she going through? Can we help? Trying to understand what. So you when you see something and you feel sensitively about it, and then you can also choose to express in your own private diary about that. I think it adds a bookmark to your life, and then at the end of the day, the more number of bookmarks you will have, the more enriched you will feel that your life has been. That's what I feel about it.
Very well said, but I have definitely an encounter to that point. I think we need to raise a generation of fearless people who can speak their mind, who can say what they feel like, who can write what they feel like, and discuss what they feel like. If not for every story, we will always have a limited selection based on the background, sensibilities of a certain bunch of people in publishing houses. Okay, so for example, my publishing house, me and my editor would be the one judging all the books, right? So it is restricted to my sensibilities, my abilities. Similarly, a Penguin and Harper and Hachette, combine all of them together. So you're still restricting communication. What we need is the ability of the industry and the world to publish every damn story.
So your counter was to the other point, whether you should publish it or not.
Yes.
So I agree. I mean, so publishing, that is the next level. I mean, if you want to publish, and it can be the ultimate short stories, single liners. It can be terribly short, tiny tales, as we have read. It can be poems. It can be. So if you publish and don't, and certainly, Dipankar, I have to say that you are a breath of fresh air in publishing world, and I hope you stay that way.
I'll surely publish the next book.
No, not for me, not for me. No, not for me, but for everyone. I mean, I've to get your book published and to get so much attention that even 6 months after that we are having the events like this, and we are planning events like this, and he's pushing me for the next novel. So that's very a relief from a little snobbish world of publishing it as I had known before, Dipankar.
Thank you so much, Rishi. It was wonderful. And now I think before we close the event, are the musicians ready for something here and there?
To be fair, we weren't informed that we were the musicians.
What?
I mean, after you said
We
there
had
are
the
going to be some
vaguest
musicians
idea.
of Ashoka.
I guess
That's when we realized
by,
we are the
by
musicians.
process of elimination, we guessed that we are the musicians of
No, you're not. You're not. You're friends who will
Yes,
who will help us help us slicing out, and we'll join you. Like we are the musicians too.
We will sing along with you.
Yeah, Dipankar is
If
a
you
good
allow us,
singer.
and don't throw us out. So Rishi, would you like to read something for us from the book?
Sure. Is there any specific section that you?
You can pick up something that you like.
I would read out a segment. I think let me select a segment from the starting of the book, because that will give us an idea about how the time zones it travels. So it travels, so the protagonist is now in his 40s, but he bases all his thought process, all his intellectual development based on the conversations he had with a friend when he was 13, 14 years ago, and this friend was Krishna. And this protagonist is now settled in New York. He has come to Mumbai to give a talk, and then the whole journey of delving into his own conscience starts. So this chapter kind of takes us back and forth and gives us a little bit. That's the starting of the book itself, after the prologue. The chapter is called as The Spotlight. And he's very successful, and he's giving a lecture, and is getting to his head that he's becoming all powerful, and then how his world is broken down again, and then to reinvent himself. Mumbai, 18th of August 2017. Who would have thought it would rain today? There's something strange about this unannounced afternoon rain. The mind that is comfortably engrossed in the daily circus of life is abruptly restrained. The sudden pause forces us to ponder upon more primitive emotions. Darkness descends suddenly, obscuring the daylight, and it tricks you to lose the sense of time. The present comes to a standstill, the future becomes inconsequential, and the beautiful as well as the painful memories from the past come back to drench your soul. The splashing sounds of soaked leather shoes of children kicking the water playfully on their way back to school competes with the sound of thunder and pouring rain. The pensive heart, looking out of the window, misses a few faces, a few touches. Nikhil was annoyed. It was just 3 hours before his flight back to New York was to take off from Mumbai, and he was getting desperate. The rain in Mumbai can be so unpredictable. Nikhil regretted his decision of agreeing for an early morning class in a reputed medical school of Mumbai, King Edward's Memorial Hospital, KEM. I should have known the temperamental weather better, he thought to himself. The rain was lashing against the windscreen with all its fury. The driver decided to take a less traversed route to the airport. This way is a little longer, sir, but I have checked on GPS. There is less traffic and no waterlogging on the way, he said. It is our best bet to get to the airport on time. The situation prevented Nikhil from resisting, but deep down, it was this particular route that he had wanted to avoid ever since he had set his foot in Mumbai. A few miles down this road would come the apartment complex where he grew up. The memories of his childhood and his parents would still be wandering out there somewhere. Moreover, he would have to cross that enchanted garden where he used to meet Krishna. He was now crossing the road next to the garden now, and Nikhil had a surreal feeling that Krishna was still there. He tried to shut out these feelings and focus on his present problem of reaching the airport on time. However, the more he tried to run away from the past, the more entangled he felt in the web of memories. There was no way to escape the deep and soothing voice of Krishna that was coming back to him after almost 20 years. Nikhil, when the sun shines bright in your life, that's the time to be more careful. Always remember that the first thing spotlight does to men is that it blinds their sight. But you know what is worse? When it also blinds their insight. Slouched on the back seat of the car, these words echoed in Nikhil's mind as if he was still a 10-year-old child, obscure to the complexities of the world and ready to absorb new thoughts. He was receptive, he was innocent, he was pure. He had reached almost to the end of the park now. Nikhil turned his head back to catch the final glimpse of his yesteryears, and then suddenly he started laughing inaudibly in the car as the car zoomed ahead and the enchanted garden faded away. I have grown up, Krishna. You don't need to guide me at every step now. But don't worry, I will always remember everything that you have ever told me. It had been nearly 10 years since he had moved to New York. Everything that one could desire from life was within his reach, yet there was a strange sense of emptiness that was overpowering him these days. It was difficult to explain this vacuum to the world. The dramatic rise in his professional life had made him feel accomplished. Then why this inexplicable uneasiness was hovering all over him? We all need someone in our lives who can answer these raw and fundamental questions of our minds, sometimes in words, sometimes with a reassuring smile, or at times just with an allaying silence. Nikhil was fortunate that way. He had a childhood companion named Krishna. However, he lost him somewhere on the road to adulthood. Nikhil was merely 10 years old when he first met Krishna. While he was a child who was only beginning to understand the complexities of life, Krishna was already a graying man, full of experiences and wisdom. He still was the closest friend that Nikhil ever had in his life. Nikhil did not understand many things that Krishna told him then. He was not stupid, just young, like we all are once in our lives. Not stupid, just young.
Thank you, Rishi. Thank you for the wonderful reading. I think we are now towards the fag end of the evening, and I'd like to thank you for coming all the way from Lucknow and giving us this wonderful evening.